is Joe Anthony with, yes,
I'm sorry, time?
5 to 7.
Thank you.
with the Nutcracker.
We were out shooting along a rocky ridge, surrounded by boulders and mountainside, as one is wont to do when shooting at a quarry. And I had my shotgun up and was aiming, and in front of me was a line of nutcrackers. Now, these nutcrackers belonged to my grandmother. I was, in effect, firing at her legacy and watching them blast apart in a cataclysm of wood and nutcracker parts. And this is callous, very callous of me. But there were so many nutcrackers. I moved in with my grandmother when my father decided it was a better idea that I work at the shoe store and skip the rest of high school and any fancy book learning that came after that. And he holds it to me to this day that I moved out so I could continue my education. This education was to involve what is a hoarder and what do they do. Because when I moved in with my grandmother, I found that she was prepared to restock Fort Sumter. She had built a legacy of knickknacks and an amazing collection of just nifty things that I had to unpack and get rid of when she passed away, tragically. We found soap by the case. She was the kind of woman that would stack up boxes and then put a doily on top, lest someone think it's not a table to use. There was more than 100 pounds of dry goods, beans, rice, enough for me to learn how to make chili, even though I am god-awful at cooking. It took a lot of trial and error, but the first 12 batches were inedible, and everything else, well, we kind of struggled through. I remember going through her house and just seeing racks of nutcrackers. And if you don't think being stared at by nutcrackers that have that angry grimace at all times will drive you a little insane, I blame a little bit of that for my disposition today. A little bit out there from being stared at. Now these nutcrackers, something you'll notice if you ever play with one, the lever makes the teeth move up and down to smash nuts. Something else, if you put a little bit of wood glue on the back of that handle, when you set them up as a target practice, it looks like they're screaming. There were soap nutcrackers and dollar store nutcrackers, nutcrackers on strings that would flail their legs when you pulled on them. There were tin nutcrackers and nutcrackers from Walmart that fell apart before they ever got home. And some of those were my targets for that day. However, we sent as many as we could to relatives. We ended up getting Christmas letters with nutcrackers on the front sent back from our collection that said, please stop sending us nutcrackers. My father sent me a letter saying he set up a nutcracker hospital because when it went through FedEx, almost all of them were missing legs and arms. He gave up when he got to about 100 nutcrackers and started bandaging them because he ran out of wood glue and didn't want to continue. My grandmother was an interesting woman. Why she hoarded, I didn't understand for the longest time. It was hard for me to wrap my head around. I went through life very Spartan, didn't carry much with me, figured that I would just pick up whatever I needed when I went there. I was waiting for her to pass on in a hospice bed, and we're watching one of her favorite movies, Casino. She loves all mafia movies, but this one was her favorite. And while he is gunning someone down with a Tommy gun, she tells me, you know why I like mobster men? And I said, I have no idea. And she said, it's because they're loyal. The men in those movies are loyal enough to do anything for their families. And she stopped talking, and I looked around the room, and I started thinking to myself, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the clue I needed. Maybe tiny ceramic Jesus will never do time like my uncle. Maybe these wooden nutcrackers aren't going to walk out and marry the wrong person. Maybe all the things that she's looking for in people, she's getting through these little knickknacks and ornaments. It took me a long time to understand this. It took me longer to accept it, and longer still before I started letting go of the things she had. My aunt and I went through all of her belongings, sending as much as we could away, selling what we could, but eventually there was just too much. We have sheds full of her stuff still. It will probably never go away until we pass on, and some of our descendants look at these nutcrackers and say, what were they thinking? But for one day, I was able to walk out with a box of these nutcrackers, And on my way out the door, having cooked horrible chili for my friends that they ate while we're at the gun range, I thought to myself, maybe this is too callous of me. Maybe this is a bit too much. And then I walked out and I said, nope, Granny, this one's for you.